Ethan Parker was 36 years old and already the owner of a small but growing chain of gas stations across Michigan. He was known in the industry for being strict, methodical, and fiercely principled. To many he had it all: financial stability, a solid reputation, and a team of loyal managers spread across his branches. He wasn't the flashy type, no expensive suits or luxury cars, just a well-kept man who believed in discipline and consistency. But despite the success, one particular gas station was becoming a thorn in his side. It wasn't about the location or competition. The problem was internal and persistent. That station, located on the east side of Grand Haven, had become a hotspot for customer complaints, unusually high turnover, and an uptick in merchandise theft. Ethan had reviewed the numbers, checked the security footage, even sent in secret shoppers. Nothing added up. The shoplifting was subtle, and no employee stood out as suspicious. The station just felt off. Ethan prided himself on paying his employees well, offering flexible shifts, and investing in training. He wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but this station was beginning to test his patience. He hated micromanaging, but he couldn't sit back and watch one branch undermine everything he had built. He didn't want to believe his employees were dishonest, but something wasn't working. He'd already replaced the manager once. That helped for about a month, then the cycle returned: chaos, complaints, and quitting. While most business owners might cut their losses, Ethan wasn't wired that way. He believed that people were the solution, not the problem. And even though this station was exhausting him, part of him was more curious than angry. What exactly was going wrong, and who was behind it? He didn't know it yet, but the answer was about to arrive in the most unexpected way. Determined to fix the station once and for all, Ethan made a strategic decision. He called a meeting with his regional managers and proposed a short-term transfer of key personnel from his top-performing locations. His logic was simple: if he couldn't identify the problem, maybe a team with fresh eyes and proven track records could. Among those selected was Margot Hughes, a veteran manager in her mid-50s. Margot had been with Ethan's company for nearly 10 years. She was known for her attention to detail, strong organizational skills, and no-nonsense attitude. Her numbers were excellent. Her stations ran like clockwork. If anyone could stabilize Grand Haven, it was her. What Ethan didn't fully account for was Margot's style. She was efficient, yes, but warm? Not quite. She had a tendency to micromanage, and her expectations left little room for flexibility. Her feedback was blunt, often bordering on harsh. And while she never crossed a formal HR line, her presence alone was enough to cause tension among newer staff. Still, Ethan trusted the data more than the rumors. He gave her full authority and sent her in with a small team of trusted associates. At first, things seemed to improve. Reviews stabilized, the theft reports dropped, and employees were showing up on time. Ethan felt cautiously optimistic. But that didn't last long. 2 weeks later, he received a resignation letter from Harry, one of the gas attendants who had transferred with Margot. Ethan called him in for a private conversation. "Why are you leaving?" Ethan asked, genuinely concerned. Harry sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. "I appreciate the raise, sir, but no amount of money makes up for the stress." "What kind of stress?" "She nitpicks everything: how I stand, how I smile, how I wipe down the pump handle. But it's not just that. She started commenting on my personal life. Last week my wife stopped by with lunch and I stepped away for 5 minutes. She told me to manage my family after hours." Ethan leaned back in his chair, quiet. "I respect the company," Harry added, "but I can't work under her. I'd rather quit." Ethan didn't argue. He could feel the weight in Harry's voice. This wasn't about laziness or entitlement. This was about culture. Margot might have been competent, but she was also draining the life out of the team. And now, he had another problem to solve. Ethan left the office that afternoon feeling deflated. The revolving door at the Grand Haven station was becoming more than a management issue. It was turning into a moral one. He didn't want his employees to dread showing up. He didn't want people walking away burned out and bitter. He needed a quick replacement for Harry, even just temporarily. Someone who could fill the gap until he found a permanent solution. As he stood outside the station, watching the late afternoon traffic drift by, his eyes caught on someone unusual. A young woman stood near the edge of the parking lot. Her clothes were worn and hung loosely on her frame. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She didn't look dangerous, just tired. She wasn't panhandling, and she wasn't pumping gas. She was just standing there, staring off into the distance. Ethan hesitated, then approached her. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Do you need anything?" She turned, startled. Then she smiled softly. "No, I was just thinking. Sorry." "Are you looking for work?" Her eyes lit up. "Honestly, Yes, I'll do anything. I learn fast, I'm not picky. What's your name? Samantha. Samantha Rivers. He looked her over. She couldn't have been more than 27. She looked like someone who had hit a rough patch, but something about her demeanor told him she hadn't given up. Do you have any paperwork? ID? Anything? She hesitated. I do, just not on me. I've been moving around. Ethan raised a hand. It's okay. Come with me. She blinked, surprised. Wait, really? Yeah, he said. I have a shift that needs filling. He led her into the station and straight into the manager's office. Margot looked up from her tea with raised eyebrows. Miss Hughes, Ethan said, we've got a new recruit. Margot's mouth twitched. You're hiring on the street now? Ethan gave her a firm look. She starts today. If she quits in a week, we'll talk again. Margot scoffed but didn't argue. He turned back to Samantha. Let's get you set up. Write down your sizes, we'll get you a uniform. If anyone gives you trouble, you call me. Deal? She nodded. Deal. Ethan had no idea what he was doing. He was breaking every hiring protocol he had ever written. But something in her eyes told him this might just work. Samantha showed up the next morning 15 minutes early. By the time Margot arrived, Samantha had already swept the sidewalk, restocked the windshield fluid stand, and tidied the coffee counter. She wore her temporary uniform like it belonged to her, not out of pride, but with quiet dignity. Ethan didn't make it back that week. He had meetings across the state, supply issues to resolve, and plans for the upcoming corporate New Year party. But he kept tabs through Margot's daily reports, which surprisingly were brief and positive. 3 days in, she wrote, new girl learns fast. A week later, no complaints, customers like her. 2 weeks later, she reminds me to drink water. Ethan chuckled when he read that last one. Still, he didn't want to assume things were perfect. He decided to drop by unannounced. It was a cold Wednesday morning when he parked across the street and watched the station from his car. A silver sedan pulled in. Samantha came out to greet the driver. She moved with purpose and poise, her uniform clean, hair pulled back neatly. She helped an elderly woman fill her tank, wiped the windows without being asked, and offered a sincere smile that felt more real than any training could teach. Ethan finally stepped out and walked across the lot. Morning, Samantha, he said. She turned quickly, then relaxed into a smile. Mr. Parker. I didn't see you there. How's it going? Great, honestly, I like it here. He looked at her closely. The tired girl he'd met weeks ago was gone. She seemed brighter, steadier, like someone who had found her footing. Is Margot treating you well? He asked. Samantha grinned. She's unique, but yes, she's been good to me. That answer caught him off guard. Really, you find her easy to work with? She's got a tough shell, but I think she just needed someone to listen. Ethan nodded slowly, unsure what to say. He made his way inside. Margot was standing near the break room, arms crossed, frowning at 2 attendants chatting near the stockroom. Why are you standing around while Samantha cleans the coffee machine? She barked. The attendants mumbled an apology and scattered. Then she turned and saw Ethan. Her frown vanished. Mr. Parker, what a surprise. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? Couldn't be better, she beamed. Samantha's a gift. I mean it. He blinked. You really think so? She's sharp, smarter than most people I've trained, and kind. She doesn't make excuses. She just does the work. For a moment, Ethan stood frozen. Margot was smiling. And she looked a little slimmer, too. A coffee in her hand, no cookie in sight. She laughed when she saw his expression. Don't look so shocked, she said. Samantha got me trying a new diet. Ethan left that day more confused than ever, but somehow hopeful. Whatever Samantha had brought into that station, it was working. The company's annual New Year's celebration was always a grand affair. Ethan believed in showing appreciation, and he spared no expense: 5-course meals, live music, and generous bonuses. Invitations had gone out weeks ago, and every employee was welcome. Samantha's name was on the RSVP list. Ethan noticed it while reviewing the guest roster, and for a moment he paused. He hadn't expected her to attend. In fact, part of him doubted she even owned formal clothes. Maybe she would skip it out of modesty or discomfort. But if she showed up, he'd be glad. She deserved to be there as much as anyone. The evening of the party arrived and guests began trickling into the upscale downtown venue. Most came dressed in their best, polished, confident, buzzing with anticipation. Ethan moved from table to table, shaking hands, laughing at inside jokes, congratulating managers on another year of success. But his eyes kept drifting to the entrance. Part of him was just curious. What would Samantha wear? Would she come at all? He had just turned to speak with one of the district managers when he heard a soft voice behind him. "Good evening, Mr. Parker." He turned, and for the first time in years he was speechless. The woman standing before him was absolutely radiant. She wore a deep emerald gown that hugged her frame with elegance, her hair swept into a graceful twist. Her posture was poised, her smile calm and composed. She didn't look like the girl from the parking lot. She looked like she belonged in a room of diplomats and CEOs. Ethan stared, genuinely confused. I'm sorry. Do we know each other?" She laughed, a warm, genuine laugh that lit up her eyes. "Samantha Rivers," she said. His jaw nearly dropped. "That's not possible." She gave a playful shrug. "Apparently it is." He blinked. How is this even possible?" "You assumed I'd stay in survival mode forever," she said gently. "That's fair. Most people do." "I didn't mean." "It's okay," she interrupted. "You gave me a job when no one else would. That's enough." "But no, I wasn't always lost. Life just hit me harder than expected." He nodded slowly, still processing. "You look incredible." "Thank you," she smiled. "I borrowed the dress from a friend. She used to work in fashion retail. I guess I still have a few people rooting for me." From across the room, Margot caught Ethan's eye and mouthed something while grinning ear to ear. Then she gave a small, proud nod. Ethan laughed under his breath. "She's proud of you." "She is a softie deep down," Samantha replied. They stood there for a moment, both watching the room fill with laughter and music. For the first time in a long while, Ethan wasn't thinking about spreadsheets or supply chain metrics. He was thinking about second chances, and how sometimes the people we expect the least from are the ones who change everything. "Enjoy yourself tonight," he said. "I already am," Samantha replied. And as she walked toward a group of colleagues, laughing, dancing, fitting right in, Ethan realized he wasn't looking at a gas station attendant. He was looking at a reminder of what belief could do. Later that evening, after the dinner plates had been cleared and the music mellowed into soft jazz, Ethan found himself stepping outside for a breather. The cold night air felt crisp against his face. He wasn't out there long before he heard soft footsteps behind him. "Mind if I join you?" Samantha asked, holding a mug of cocoa. "Not at all," he replied. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. "I owe you an explanation," Samantha said quietly. "You gave me a chance without knowing anything about me. I should have told you earlier. I just didn't know if it would matter." Ethan looked over. "I never asked." "That's on me." She smiled faintly. "Before all this, I was a second-grade teacher. I loved it. The kids, the classroom, the chaos. It made me feel alive. I had a fiancé too. We were saving for a house. Life felt solid." She paused, eyes drifting upward. "Then a car accident took everything. It wasn't even my fault, just wrong place, wrong time. I was in the hospital for weeks. Medical bills piled up. I lost my job, the apartment, the savings. My fiancé left within 2 months, said it was all too heavy." Ethan's throat tightened. "I couch surfed for a while. Slept in shelters. There were nights I curled up under a park bench just trying not to cry. But I never touched drugs, never begged. I couldn't let the worst version of my life become my identity." She sipped her cocoa. "So when you asked if I needed work, I almost said no, out of pride. But something in your voice told me it was okay to say yes." Ethan shook his head slowly. "I'm glad you did." "I wasn't trying to hide who I was," she continued. "I just didn't want pity. I wanted someone to see me as capable again." "You are," Ethan said simply, "more than capable." She gave a small laugh. "You should have seen your face when I walked in tonight." "I nearly fell over," he admitted. They both laughed, the kind of laugh that comes from mutual respect, forged not from titles or roles but from shared humanity. Samantha glanced up at him. "Thank you for letting me earn it, instead of giving it out of guilt." Ethan met her gaze. "Thank you for reminding me why I started this business in the first place." And in that moment, under the cold sky and warm glow of the party behind them, they weren't employer and employee. They were simply two people who understood what it meant to lose and what it meant to rise again. The weeks following the party brought a calm sense of rhythm to the Grand Haven station. Customer reviews continued to improve. Shoplifting incidents stopped altogether. Even the staff who had once been ready to quit seemed energized, more focused, even proud. Ethan quietly promoted Samantha to assistant manager, and no one questioned it, not even Margot. If anything, she advocated for it. "She's better with people than I am," Margot admitted one afternoon. "And trust me, that's not something I say often." Ethan smiled. But more than the numbers or smooth operations, it was the shift in energy that struck him. The place no longer felt tense. It felt human, collaborative, real. He sat in his office one evening, looking through employee files and making notes for end-of-year evaluations. When he reached Samantha's file, he stopped. There wasn't much there, just the basics. No formal resume, no college transcripts, no reference letters. But then he remembered the way she handled a difficult customer last week. How she trained a new hire with patience and humor. How she listened before she spoke. He didn't need paper proof. He had seen enough. Ethan leaned back and wrote one sentence at the top of her file. Best hire I never planned for. That night, as he turned off the lights and locked the doors, he thought about all the people he'd overlooked over the years, all the assumptions he'd made based on clothes, tone of voice, or what someone listed on their resume. And he silently promised himself never again. Because sometimes the best people don't come through polished resumes or glowing references. Sometimes they just walk in when you're tired and desperate and surprise you by becoming everything you never knew you needed. Ethan stood by the window of his office one late afternoon, watching the sun dip below the gas pumps outside. Samantha was out there, wiping down the windshield of an elderly man's car, smiling as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She wasn't just doing her job, she was elevating it. That moment made him think. How many people had he passed by over the years? How many had he written off too quickly? People like Samantha who didn't fit the mold, who didn't have the paperwork or polish, but carried the kind of strength you don't see until you're paying attention. He thought back to the day he hired her. He hadn't planned to. She wasn't even looking for a specific job, just a chance. And that chance had transformed everything. The Grand Haven station, once his most problematic location, was now outperforming several of his best branches. Not because of new technology or policies, but because of one person and the ripple effect of treating people with dignity, not pity. As he turned away from the window, Ethan smiled to himself. Not every success story begins in a boardroom. Some begin on the curb outside a gas station with a girl wearing threadbare jeans and a spark in her eye. And maybe that's what the world needs more of: fewer judgments, more second chances. If you're watching this, and it struck a chord, maybe there's a Samantha in your life. Someone you've overlooked, someone just waiting for a chance to show you who they really are. Don't miss it. And if this story moved you, share and leave a comment, because you never know who might need a reminder that anyone, given the chance, can rise.